Happy Easter, Highland Park family. He has risen. Jesus is alive today. It's our Easter celebration. And since we're at home, I thought it would be good to come to you from my home to share Easter in a different way than we've ever done it. Probably we'll never do this again. So here's our opportunity to experience something new on Easter Sunday. And I wanted to start by telling you a story. This is going to be a little bit different Easter talk, not a traditional one in any sense of the word. You'll know when I tell this story what I'm talking about. But when I was 16 years old, our family took a retreat. It was with our church and with a few other churches in Rickey, New Mexico. It's up in the Rocky Mountains. It's a beautiful place. It has got dorms and cabins. And at the bottom of the hill, where they had built a gym, that was where everybody would hang out. It was in the gym because next to the gym was the place where everybody ate, so lunchroom. So it was a corrugated metal building, very basic, metal roof and concrete floor where the gym was. And so I'm a preacher's kid, been in church all my life. And one of the things that we do is get bored because, our dad's talking or our mom's talking, so it's like, so we find things to do that probably aren't the right things to do, but they're just something to pass the time. And one of the things that I did was I was an investigator. I would like to look in closets and find where the hidden bubble gum was in the Sunday school rooms. I would look in doors that I probably shouldn't go in, but they didn't say employees only, so they weren't off limits. So I saw this door and I didn't know where it went. And so I thought, let me go investigate. And this door had a set of stairs behind the door. It wasn't locked. And, it's not locked. They don't care if you go in it. And I climbed the stairs and I saw this closet that was upstairs looking over the gym. There was chicken wire so you wouldn't fall into the gym. But this was a very basic structure. But up in this closet, it was like a treasure trove of stuff. Things that they didn't know what to do with, but they didn't want to get rid of, kind of, that deal. And there was a canister, a silver canister fire extinguisher, probably circa 1955. I mean, it looked like it was the kind of thing that used to be behind glass, like only break in times of emergency. And I'd seen these all my life and always wondered what it would be like to squirt a little bit of fire extinguisher. So I thought to myself in my 16-year-old brain, wouldn't it be cool if I took the fire extinguisher and I took the handle and just a little bit let it go, fog the whole gym, and everybody walking in is going to think, man, this is so cool, right? Well, I looked at it and there's a little handle there and there's a pin through the handle that makes it's like the safety valve. You have to pull the pin before you squeeze. Well, the pin was bent, like, don't do this. Something's up. But 16-year-old me was like, it's worth the risk. I mean, really, honestly. So I pulled the pin, I straightened it out, and I thought, okay, here we go. So I gently squeezed. Well, what I didn't know was the reason they had it upstairs was they must not passed inspection, because this thing, instead of just squirting a little fog out on the floor, exploded this way. I was holding the handle. The force of the explosion the bottom of the canister went this way, so the nozzle was right in my face. So all the powder that was aimed that way came out in 1 second. It was over. It was empty. And most of it was on my face, in my eyes, in my mouth, in my nose. So I walked down. I literally could not see. My eyelids were unable to close. It happened so fast I couldn't even get my eyes shut. So it was caked full of white powder. I'm blindly walking down the stairs, and people they had to see the sight of this white-faced kid coming down and feel sorry for me. But then I'm like crying out, help! Thankfully, there was a doctor in the area, and he came down, and my eyes were caked, so he flushed them. He knew, kind of believed he knew what the contents were, and he rescued me that day. He took my eyes and cleaned them out. He took a Q-tip with Vaseline on it and made sure that everything was out. And I was still not seeing correctly for a few days after that. And thank the Lord my eyes were saved just because I went in a door I shouldn't have gone in. But after that fact, even the stupid me, thankfully there was somebody there to rescue me. Now, the idea of rescue is what we're going to focus on today. Rescue is when you need help because something bigger than you has happened to you, and you need somebody to give you a hand up. Kind of like on the Weather Channel, if you've ever watched somebody getting caught in a roaring river and they drove into the water. They shouldn't have drove into the water, but they found themselves in the middle of a roaring kind of flood stage, on a river, whatever it was. And so they've got to have like a human chain or a rope or something. They need a rescue. Maybe you've needed a rescue on the side of the road. You understand? You made that call to Geico and they show up and you're awesome. Or maybe somebody stopped and helped you fix that flat tire. Or maybe you've needed a rescue because you've had a health issue or somebody in your family has gone through something. All of us, from time to time, need rescue. And Easter Sunday is probably the best time ever to talk about the rescue party that Jesus sent, starting with himself. When Jesus exited the tomb, he was dead when he came off the cross, remember. They laid him in a tomb. But Easter Sunday is our reminder that Jesus is no longer in the tomb, that he is alive with us today, and he is able to rescue us from whatever we're going through. The Apostle John, that wrote the book of John, was so taken by all that Jesus did and said. He said words to this extent. He said, if all the things about Jesus were written down, all the good things that he did and said were written down, the whole world could not contain the books that would be written about it. Jesus was and is so marvelous, and he is here to rescue us when we need it. So let's go outside on my back porch. Most of my good ideas and all the sermons that you hear on Sunday from week to week, if you like them or not, most of the inspiration happened when Jesus and I are talking on the back porch. So I want to deliver this sermon from that very place. Come on, join me. Well, here we are on the back porch, and this is where the Lord speaks to me a lot. So I want to talk to you just a minute about the rescue that you and I need from time to time, and especially on Easter Sunday. I love the words of the Psalm, Psalm 61. It says, "Hear my cry, O God. Listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth, I call to you. I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." You know, in the Pacific, when they have tsunami warnings, many times they tell them to get to higher ground because the waves of life are coming their direction. You and I are experiencing right now a financial, a relational, a boredom tsunami that has hit us. Many of us are just kind of like, okay, God, when does this end? And so the waves of life are around us, but when we say, lead me to the rock, give me that place in the middle of the storms that are around us of safety, and every day, Jesus, my rock, does these things. In fact, there are 4 things I want to highlight that he does for us every day because he's alive. And he is here to rescue those who need help. The first thing that Jesus does is he lifts my fears. He gives me peace. Now that's rescue from the rock. Peace in the world where every day, when you look at the headlines, all the news is bad. Every once in a while, you'll see a hopeful sign like maybe the curve is beginning to flatten. Maybe the social distancing is working out, but yet there are still many people every day who are dying from coronavirus, and how we don't know when the end will be. But I'm not afraid. And David wasn't afraid when he wrote these words, Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. So David is saying before the bad stuff happens that God is with us anywhere. So if the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, or if the earth gives way, we've got earthquakes around the world right now. We've got financial earthquakes, relational earthquakes. We've got different things that are attacking our minds that have not done that before. We're having to be home and stuck and not relating to people. It's causing anxiousness and loneliness and frustration. And most of the people in our house have been through a day or two of depression because they can't connect with people. And I'm sure it's true in your house as well. But Jesus lifts every fear when real danger is near. He lifts our fears when we remember and remind ourselves and we call out of our hearts the words of God that he's put in there. God is our help. He's our ever-present help. He is our refuge and strength. So we say those words out loud, and what happens is when we speak God's word to the air like that, that's truth. And somehow it gets around to calming our own mind. Sometimes we just got to let it out of our mouth before we can really feel it in our heart, to know that Jesus is lifting my fears. Secondly, he lightens my load. He gives me power. That's rescue from the rock. The Apostle Paul knew this kind of power when he wrote the book of Philippians. If you look in the New Testament, you notice there's different names of cities and people that Paul would write to. And one of them was to the church in Philippi. So that's what we call the letter to Philippians. Now, Paul was in jail when he wrote it, but he knew Jesus. And he knew Jesus was with him in the jail. You say, well, why didn't Jesus get him out of the jail? Because Paul had some work to do while in the jail. And also, God was doing some work on Paul while in the jail. It's interesting to note that. And here's what he writes. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret, that's a big secret, of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. You see, Jesus gives me more grace for every challenge I face. He gives me grace to deal with the questions and problems I have today. Now tomorrow, he'll give me grace for those things. And next year, he'll give me grace for that. Whatever the enemy comes at me with, his grace is sufficient to deal with every problem that I face. And sometimes you might have friends and they're going through difficult situations. You're like, how do they get through it? I'll tell you how. If they're a follower of Jesus, they're only getting through it by the grace of God. That's how we get through things. He gives us that grace. He lightens our load. And the Easter story is one that shows us how tragedy can ultimately become triumph. The enemies of Jesus thought they killed him. They put him in the ground, and they sealed the tomb, and a Roman guard, or I don't know, there might have been 2 guards. There might have been 4 guards. There was a bunch of people there. They were guarding the tomb on that first Easter Sunday. And when Jesus' followers went to the tomb, they weren't expecting it to be empty. They were shocked. In fact, the empty tomb didn't convince anybody that Jesus was alive. It was when he appeared to them that they were convinced. And you know, for the first 300-400 years, there was no scripture as we know it, all put into one book. The church was built on an event, the event of the resurrection. So when people would meet together in homes like we're doing today, they would base their faith on the fact that Jesus was dead, but now he's alive and he is with us here today. And that's what they knew to do, was to worship that same Christ that not only lived back then, but lives in their heart and can live in your heart today. See, Jesus gives us grace for every challenge we face. I want to take you next door to my neighbor, Dawn Fernari. The Lord has given her grace, amazing grace, to deal with some of the difficulties she's faced. And I want her to describe her journey with you right now. Well, here we are on the back porch of my next door neighbor, Dawn Fernari. Dawn has been here since we've been in Lakeland. Our kids have grown up and seen each other around the same age. It's kind of been fun.
Very fun.
Getting to know you. And I know over the course of this year that you've had a few challenges, health challenges in life and different grief that your family has gone through. And one of the things that I've noticed about Dawn is her attitude has never changed, even though she's gone through very difficult stuff. And maybe just kind of tell them a little bit about yourself. I know what you do maybe for your normal days, and what happened this year that was a little different.
We have 3 daughters. My husband and I have been married 23 years, 19, 16, and 13. And this year I was diagnosed with a pancreatic cyst. At first they told us it was cancer. And
that's when we came up to the hospital to see you, right?
Exactly.
Like, oh no, because you don't like those 2 words together.
No.
Cancer anytime. So there was a process of just like, this is no big deal to, oh my goodness, this is something I need to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
How were you able to take all right, this is a bad report. How do you take that to the Lord, and how did you learn to do that?
I think I've always been a Christian, and probably some areas where I've always needed to work on. And I've always been good about praying for other people, but I've struggled with praying for myself. I do ask for, I've asked for things, help in situations and dealing with people and things like that, but to give it all up to God, that was really hard. And I think during the process of meeting all the different medical staff who would give me a hug after receiving my diagnosis or going to see somebody else, they would give me a hug. And I think those hugs, at first I felt like they were telling me, oh, I feel so bad for your diagnosis. This is awful. I'm going to give her a hug. But then I thought, I think God is telling me that it's going to be okay. This is how he's letting me know that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and we prayed, and you prayed.
Mm-hmm.
And for praying for yourself, that was a new thing, right?
It was a not only spiritual release, but it was a mental, physical release. I felt it come out in my entire body when I asked God to take all of this upon him. And to know that there's so many people out there praying for me, or the few people that did know were praying. I called them my prayer warriors. And to know that they were praying for me, I needed to make sure that I held up my bargain and gave it all to God.
Yeah. And so you say you felt a release.
Head to toe. Just came out of my body and went to God. And why I waited till I was 50 years old to do that, I don't know, but I've done it since then.
Amen. Amen. And that's one of the things about God's grace that he gave you in the moment. Like, you didn't need it a year before, but now when you need it, he's always ready to help.
Yes.
So recently, we called this week to ask if you would share your story, and you had another piece of news.
Yes.
So what was that about?
I recently have a scan to follow up my surgery from the fall, and I found out that I have a large lemon right here, cyst, and last Thursday I was washing my car and I got a call from the church, and it was Pastor Dave Smith calling just to say, hey, can I pray for you? He had no idea what was going on.
Wow.
No idea. And this is how wonderful the church is and how God works. And I said, well, you can pray for me. I have a PET scan tomorrow. And usually I would not have revealed that, but I said, I have a PET scan tomorrow. And he prayed with me. Yeah. And then Monday, I received a call from you guys asking me to do this. And I said, I need 24 hours to go see my oncologist to make sure that this is not cancer. And they prayed with me again, and we're all good.
Praise Jesus. All good.
All good.
All right. Well, I know that your journey is different from others, but everybody is facing something.
Yes.
What would you tell people to encourage them from what you've learned about Jesus this year?
That he is with you all the time. And we tell our small groups on Wednesday nights to the youth that he is with them all the time, in school, in family situations. And he's given us an opportunity with this quarantine to have new beginnings. And your new beginning may be a new job that you're getting out of a job you don't like, but now you have an opportunity to find something. So
It's good. So thanks for being here and for sharing your story. And I know that whatever you're walking through, God's grace sometimes is found in the release. Just give those problems to him. And thanks, Don, for sharing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for all that everyone does at the church. We know it's a 24/7 hour job, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much. God bless. Man, wasn't that a great story of how God's grace has walked with Don through this difficult time? See, that's what he does. He lightens our load, and he lifts our fears. But he also, thirdly, limits our lack. This is how he provides for us. That's what my rock does for me. Paul said it this way, and my God shall supply all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. My God shall supply all your needs. Doesn't mean all your wants. Sometimes your wants are up here and your needs are down here. God will supply all your needs. And I trust that over the course of this pandemic, that he has supplied for all your needs. I know that some of you have lost your jobs, or your hours have been cut back, and your businesses face an uphill climb even when everything is open again. But remember, the God that you serve will supply all your needs, and He will limit the lack that you live with. And that's a hard thing to say. But I was thinking of it this way: Jesus fills my cart right from the start. That's an easy way to think about it. Because when you go to the grocery store right now, the first thing you do is go to the toilet paper aisle, right? Because everybody else is doing the same thing. I don't know why. That's the one thing everybody thought they're going to need more of than normal. I mean, the stores are still going to be open. Why do people hoard toilet paper? Well, still haven't found any. And so our life group was able to provide for our needs. And then Mindy did find some. Recently at Sam's, the last package, it was like, the golden ticket that she got. But you never know how God is going to supply your needs. Friday we were able to help deliver a semi-truck full of produce to our Cumbie ministry. It's because somebody thought we need to help some people. We have extra produce and we want to help, and many people from Highland Park stepped up and delivered the food, put themselves at personal risk. That's how God supplies all our needs. Sometimes it's because we say yes to investing in someone else. We give when God says give. Sometimes He'll have you write a holy check, to somebody that God has put on your mind. You think, I need to have money to give, but I'm going to give it. And when you give it, Jesus said, when you give, remember, it will always find its way back to you in a greater degree than you gave. So one of the ways He limits our lack is by teaching us to be generous with all that we have. Because when we're generous, God will get through you. He'll get to you what He can get through you. There you go. I said it wrong first. He will get to you what He can get through you. So He will limit your lack sometimes through the fact that you're generous with what you already have, and He's going to give you more. And the fourth thing He does is He leads my life. This is the beautiful part about following Jesus. I don't know the future, He does. So when I stay right with Him, I remember those words, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He leads me beside still waters, right? He leads me in the quiet places of the green pastures of life. He provides for me a table full of food. And when you follow Jesus with your life, that's a way to live firmly planted on the rock when everything is swirling around. Paul said it this way: God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. A lot of times I don't want to do what God wants me to do, but I've learned to do it anyway. That's part of the duty of following Jesus Christ. And I'm always so glad that I say no to my flesh in the moment and say yes to Jesus, because every time I say yes to Jesus, I live in my purpose, good things happen. He leads my life. That's a rescue. Because if I follow my own desires without following Jesus, I always get myself into trouble. And He will rescue you from yourself. Because remember, you're your greatest enemy, and most of the time you can make devastating decisions without asking Jesus first. You say, well, how do I know when I'm hearing from God? Well, the primary way that God communicates to us is through His Word. Remember Psalm 119, 105. This is one of the most famous verses in the Bible. Your Word, O Lord, is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your Word gives me what I need to know. And when you look for God's guidance, get into His Word. Don't look for a voice, look for a verse. And if Jesus is leading me somewhere, here's what I know. I don't have to kick the door down. I don't have to go seeking it out. He will find a way. If I seek Him with all my heart, I'll find the open door that He is leading me toward. I don't have to just kick things down and make things happen. See, Jesus lights my way when I want to stray. And that's always the truth. And as we close our time together, I want you to connect with Jesus if you're willing. He is your rescue. He is alive. The tomb couldn't hold Him because He's God Almighty in the flesh. So how do we do that? If you felt distant from the Lord, let me give you an ABC. All right? Sometimes you need us to do. So as we close, let me give you the ABCs. Number one, I want you to ask Jesus for his rescue from whatever you think is overwhelming you right now. It could be loneliness. It could be dealing with your kids at home. It could be the craziness that you face financially. Any of those things, maybe it's a health thing that you're facing, or just the fear of getting ill. Whatever it is, ask Jesus for his rescue. Secondly, be open. This is the B. Be open to his leading. Because if you come to him and you're open and say, I'm open, God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do that. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it doesn't fit my vibe, I'm going to do what you say to do because I know that your ways are best. I know that you're for me. And that's the B. After that, here's the C. I will commit to him for life. And if you do this, he will lift your fears. He will lighten your load. He will limit your lack. And he will lead your life. He will give you the peace, the power, the provision, and purpose that you need. He is your rescue.